Hey guys, how's it going? Danny Fitzy here, and today I've got another build overview for you, and that is a Hopeshredder Raider. I've done this build before in Delirium League, about a year ago now, bloody hell, time flies, eh? And it was really, really strong. It turned out to be one of my best characters in the league and best characters I ever had. And so I thought, you know what? With all the extra power and all the extra crafting options and harvest and all that good stuff that's been added to the game, let's try it again. And plus I've come into a lot of money this league, been playing a lot, so I can basically craft anything I want really, as long as it's not too mega expensive. And I like to keep it moderate anyway, because there's no point of going, hey, look at this build guy, it only costs 2 mirrors to get going. That doesn't seem very helpful, so this definitely can be done on a budget. It just requires a few special uniques, like the Hopeshredder itself, I would say. Obviously it is the build-defining unique that we're building around. But you can definitely craft a bow that will do the same thing, if not better, in the end game. And you probably want the Void Fletcher for some extra burst damage on the single target, because until you get some really nice gear, the single target is probably going to be the worst thing to catch up. The clear is always going to be there. Once you have some half decent damage with Ice Shot, you can pretty much clear the screen. So that's is what it is. So. And then obviously, because we're frenzy stacking to make use of the Hopeshredder, you probably want at least some +1 gloves, some Warlord +1 gloves, and some Dark Ray Vectors, which are a cheap unique you can pick up and quite easily found. So, I would say this build's, even the version that I'm rocking right now, is pretty cheap. I think there's a couple of items that are in the build that are like mega expensive that you could easily drop, and those are a Corrupted Blood Lion Eyes Full, which is a jewel that gives you some bow nodes, some special bow nodes. If you don't get it Corrupted Blood, it's worth like 10c. If you get it with a Corrupted Blood on it, it's going to be worth like around 6x. So 6x just for Corrupted Blood immunity. You can easily drop that off and just be a bit more aware of Corrupted Blood, or just die a few times to it. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's just a very annoying mechanic. So if you can afford to buy it and it's not going to bust the bank, then definitely do it. It's definitely very nice quality of life while mapping. And then I'm also using a Crit Hatred Watcher's Eye. Is also quite expensive. It's not needed. It's just some extra damage, really. It's one of those things you buy towards the end of the build when you're min-maxing some more, just to squeeze out some more crits, since the Hopeshredder doesn't have very high base crit. So what you're seeing in the background currently is, I think it's just a 20% Delirium. It's a Breach Delirium reward I found, so I just run it with a bunch of Scarabs to give the map as much mobs as possible, so you obviously proc more rewards. I believe there's like Harbinger, Elder, or Shaper, I can't remember which one's on there, mobs, Breach, Legion, Alva. You can see it's pretty much running through. Our defense relies entirely on dodge and evade, so if you don't really enjoy that, I wouldn't recommend any ranger build, because that side of the tree unfortunately doesn't have a lot of life, and you kind of have to go full dodge and evade to have pretty much any tankiness, to be honest. Otherwise you have to drop a lot of damage to pick up a lot of life, and it's just not worth it, especially not on softcore. So if you prefer being a tanky boy, I would definitely turn away now. You're not a tanky boy. It's a don't get hit, and then once you do get hit, eventually you'll probably get one shot, if it's by like a unique mob or anything. So you basically just run into the boss's face, and you just spray them down with your barrage, which in this case we're using frenzy, but we're using it with barrage support, so it still acts like a barrage with point blank, and you just hope you don't get hit. Obviously the more you put more min-max into the build, the more that's going to feel smoother, because you're going to have a lot more dodge. You're going to be able to hit the dodge cap, and especially trying to get that spell dodge cap would be really nice. I'm nowhere near there yet, but it can be done. So the build can feel tanky, because you just never get hit. So, but I'll talk about all the mechanics and all that good stuff in a minute. What I'll show you now, since that's enough of that gameplay, we'll show you a quick Cortex that I did the other day on stream, so the quality is a little bit worse here, but just to show you some burst damage from the frenzy that we're using. We're not using barrage in this build, because we are stacking so many frenzies that the built-in frenzy extra damage you get, as you can see here, once everything lines up, you pretty much melt anything that's in front of you. I think I die once or twice in this fight, but you can see it's purely me just being an idiot. I think I die here. I dash back into his like cone here, which is unfortunate. I thought he was firing it the other way. I guess I was basically, you know, when you just go into DPS check, I was staring at his health bar and I wasn't really paying attention because I just wanted to see the damage. And I was already triggered because I didn't put Maven on this, so it's not Maven Witness. And I was like, oh wow, what a waste of a Cortex. I could have done something with that. So, but yeah, just to talk about the single target setup, we're actually using Frenzy because if you don't know, Frenzy gives you 5% more attack damage and 5% more attack speed per Frenzy. We have 9 Frenzies. You can get 10 with a +1 bow or some +1 rings, the precursor emblems, I believe. So imagine if you're at 10, that's 50% more attack speed and 50% more attack damage. That's essentially I'd say like 2 awakened gems worth of damage on top of that. So when you actually factor in that, obviously you put the barrage support in there, so you're technically losing a link to turn the skill into a barrage skill because it has a huge less multiplier on it. Even with that, just didn't get out of the way of the slam. That was pretty easy to avoid. That's me being shit, not the build. When you consider the loss on that gem, it still works out to be way more damage because of that the frenzy stacking. So it's very good, and that's the big difference between the old version and the new version is we're using frenzy, and you can also just socket frenzy into your main clear since you have all that extra damage on the frenzy from the frenzy stacking in the gem. It's really good. Ice Shot just has way more like cleave because of the cone it does when it chains. You're just going to get way more like area and coverage, but you can pretty much socket anything in you want for the clear skill. You can use Rain of Arrows, you can use Tornado Shot, felt pretty good. You can probably use like Burning Arrow, even though I don't know why you would want to. It's essentially we're just stacking a bunch of base damage, so it's going to scale off anything really. Just some skills are just going to have better built-in mechanics. I think Ice Shot just has the best inbuilt mechanics and it has the highest damage added effectiveness as well, so it's really worth doing that. And no Flask, feels bad, man. So let's go into POB real quick while I have it open, just to give you some context to the damage numbers. Literally with just our frenzies up, the enemy being chilled and it being on Cyrus, so we're doing Cyrus boss damage here. Literally, that is the most modest boxes you'll ever see ticked because we always have perma frenzies. We're not even using inspiration on our main lick, so this is ticked for no reason. And obviously, we can easily chill an enemy. We're mostly cold damage. We have to hit them with anything that we deal cold with, and we're going to chill them. Our main frenzy skill doesn't actually chill because it has elemental focus in it, which means it can't apply elements. So you essentially have to hit them with your Ice Shot first. And then your Mirage Archer after that will continue to chill mobs and stuff. And you can also throw Frost Bomb down as well. That will chill when it explodes. It should do anyway if it crits. I don't know if it chills by default. It definitely applies to cold exposure all the time. But so even some of that DPS you just saw could potentially have not been chilled enemies. And so we're doing like 40% less damage in that case because we're using hypothermia. And we're at 3.3 million. When you start factoring in like having your crit lucky from a diamond flask and what else was it? The Dying Sun being up 5.7, that is huge. Like this gives you literally like 40% more damage because it's 2 extra proj. Extra proj is huge. You can get extra proj on your quiver or a custom bow. If you swap out the Hopeshredder, you can get like +2 on that. It's insane damage to +2. And then Cinder Swallow, because we got crit on our Cinder Swallow, we're a perma onslaught because we're a raider, but you don't have to take those nodes, and I'll talk about that in a little sec here. I'm getting priced. Someone wants to buy my shit. We're not doing that. I've learnt my lesson. So we're about 6 million DPS just with our flasks up. So that's like the burst damage you're going to get. I don't know if this is considering calculating the like frost bomb being on the mob and all that good stuff, but yeah, so it's big damn. We're going to go into D&D while we do this. Go back to the base, and now we will talk about all the gear and all that good stuff. Since we've blabbered on for a good 10 minutes, I'm going to try and go over stuff quite quickly, so I don't want the video to be like an hour long. I try to make these videos as like less time as possible, but I just have to over-explain everything. I can't help myself. So the bow that we're building around, but you can swap out for a rare bow, and I'll show you something that I'm planning on swapping out to eventually, is the Hopeshredder. It drops from Elder, so it's not like an easy build to find, an easy item to find, so I wouldn't say it's solo self-found viable because you need that, and I'd say Void Fletcher and probably Dark Ray Vectors at least, so it requires a few pieces that you're not guaranteed and can't target a farm too well, at least not at the start anyway. But basically, a Hopeshredder, it gives you a shit ton of added cold damage just on the weapon. Decent, very decent attack speed. 1.6 is very nice. That's a max roll here. But it also has a bunch of frenzy stacking things on it, so it gives you 4 move speed per frenzy, a chunk of accuracy which is built into the attack speed roll. And it also gives you a chance to avoid ailments per frenzy, gives you a bunch of extra cold damage per frenzy, it gives you 0.5 attack damage leached as life per frenzy, and then the only downside on the bow that you have to build around as well is the 200 cold damage taken per second per frenzy while moving. So as long as you're stood still, you won't take any damage, which is when you're DPSing, so it's not really an issue there. The only time this becomes a problem is when you're running around looting and you're not killing mobs because you've killed them all, or there's just no mobs around, but you have all your like frenzies up. Easy way around this is to put phase run somewhere into your sockets as a 1-button press, and phase run will consume all your frenzies to extend the buff of phase run. So it's basically just a way to remove your frenzies and remove the degen. We do have 1 minimum, so we are always taking a bit of damage, but it's pretty much nothing. And I don't know where my stone golem's gone. I had a stone golem on this guy at one point, but I guess I took him off because I didn't need it. But you can use things like stone golem, vitality. If you find a way to squeeze those in, you can definitely nullify the effect of that quite easily. I've barely tried to nullify it. If anything, I've made it worse by using a replica lawweave because my max res is lower, so I'm taking even more damage from it. Because last time I played this build, it really was like a non-factor. So I just thought, what happens if I just play it without even considering that's a thing? It feels pretty good. Every now and then, you're going to get quite low. Like you'll be like half health before you find the next pack. But the amount of attack leech you get from this, you pretty much, as soon as you hit anything, you just like insta start like regen into full. If there was a way to maybe get some more maximum life leech recovery, the maximum one, which means your life like regens faster from life leech, that would be really strong on this build because the amount of leech we've got. But I haven't invested in that, and we're still creaming the game, so it is what it is there. So yeah, ranger bow, or should I say Hopeshredder, very pog item to build around. And obviously being a raider, we get a bunch of other benefits for stacking frenzies. Frenzies are huge damage. In terms of crafting a rare bow, I've got a spine bow here, which is a really nice base to craft on because it has really decent crit and attack speed. It's usually got quite good fizz on it as well. It's usually more of a fizz conversion bow, but I managed to roll a T1 cold damage T1 crit with a frenzy, which is quite hard as a combo to get, I think. So we basically got to harvest craft this. We have to remove the fire res so we can put attack speed on it, and then we have some spare prefixes to put on here. I can't remember which like prefixes there are. I don't know if the arrows, the plus arrows, are prefixes, but if they are, potentially could slam on some extra arrows, which are huge damage. But even just this bow alone with the attack speed instead of the fire res will outscale Hopeshredder, and obviously you don't take the annoying degen, but you will lose some move speed and the big leech, but we have enough leech on the tree anyway, so it's not really a big problem. But yeah, just so you know, the reason why this outscales it is obviously the +1 frenzy is huge damage, plus the base crit. The base crit's really good, and we are crit, so having like another 2.7 crit there on a T1 crit, and it's not even max T1, so this will go up to like almost 9 crit as base. Is just massive damage for us, and it outscales the added damage because we have a lot of added damage from other items. We pretty much stack added damage in this build, so that's the reason why it will outscale it at some point. But as a cheap unit, you can get this 6-link for like 1 to 2x. It's a pretty insane bow. So the main item, the main build defining item there it is. Then something new we didn't have last time, a Blizzard Crown, which is a new ritual base, and it basically gives you a bunch of added cold as an implicit, so it doesn't affect the other mods on the helmet. We have a Hunter one here, but that's completely irrelevant. If you want a really nice helmet, I'd get a Redeemer helmet, and there's a -9 res to nearby enemies. You get the cold one, minus cold. And you can also get the 10% chance to get power charge on kill, which is really good for mapping. And those are the two you probably want to look for. And yeah, that's about it. I just rolled mine as a quick life resist helmet. The only thing I made sure to get was a decent enchant. The curse effect on Sniper's Mark is insanely strong and is the most damage you can squeeze out of any enchant. Because the Sniper's Mark is an increased damage taken on the mob from projectile hits, so it's a more multiplier for us because it's our only source of increase taken on the mob. And we get 30% increase, which is like an extra 10% on this if you do the math. So insane damage. The other good enchants are obviously any of the frenzy ones. There's the frenzy one that gives you like increased damage per frenzy on frenzy. And if you don't know what I'm saying, there's too many frenzies. Frenzy is the name of a skill as well. Which is what we're using for our single target, and you can get up to like 9% damage per frenzy for frenzy. It's kind of weird, but you get what I'm saying. So you can get 90% with 10 frenzies up. There's also a lower end one that has 6%, which is also better, and you can also just get the flat 40% one that pretty much every skill has in the game. And you can also get some other stuff like having your hatred or your Herald of Ice. Less reservation. You can maybe squeeze in a vitality to help with the degen. There's a lot of options for the enchants, so definitely look around, but I definitely recommend the Blizzard Crown because of that added damage. It's a lot of damage. Then for our unique our amulet, shall I say, we've just gone for a unique. The Pandemonious, pretty go-to amulet for any cold damage build because it gives you a shit ton of penetration, and at this point when we have so much added damage, our single biggest damage increase, especially against bosses for single target, is penetration, and this gives a shit ton of it, and also against chilled enemies again. So you need to make sure you're chilling enemies. I probably would recommend maybe not using Ellie Focus if you're new at the game and you don't really understand the ailment system too well, because you might miss out on a lot of damage because you're gonna not be proccing it. You just need to make sure you're proccing it elsewhere, like with your ice shot, like hitting them with something else beforehand. And then obviously Mirage Archer keep shooting, like I said, so you can keep up the chill, or you can do other things. You could have there's a lot of things in this game, a lot of options there just to make sure you chill them. We also blind chilled enemies on hit, so it's even more of a defensive layer for our evade and dodge. Shit ton of cold damage on it, and has a bit of cold res on it, so it's quite nice. It helps us cap our reses out, because having a lot of uniques usually means it's quite hard to cap your reses. And then we've just put the LE quality on it from the Metamorph Catalysts, because that also increases the damage pen roll on this amulet, so very strong to do that. And at the moment I've anointed Freedom of Movement purely because I don't have phasing from her anywhere else in the build, because I haven't taken the phasing Raider nodes, but I'll talk about that when I get to the tree. Then we've got a Void Fletcher. The main thing about this is just the arrows that you shoot out. It does like these Void Fletchers, which are like the purple explosions you'll see during the gameplay. You get like one, as you see here, every 0.5 seconds. They're actually really strong and they do a lot of damage because when you use Frenzy or use anything with Barrage support on it, or you use the Barrage skill, if you have all 5 of these up ready to go, when you hit Barrage, it will dump all 5 because it does per arrow. It's not per cast of a skill. So you dump all of them, and with Dying Sun up, you have 3 of them going out, and they overlap, and they just shit on a mob. They'll just die in a big purple explosion. And also having Hatred crit Watcher's Eye as well is going to give this a lot more crit, so it has more chance to do even more damage. So the actual Void Fletcher proc on this unique is really strong. The main other reason why you'd get it is it has a shit ton of added cold to attacks, which is really nice. And it also has some like projectile speed, which is quite nice, and some mana on kill, which makes mapping a bit smoother. And then another thing you want to know about this is you want to get a corrupted one that doesn't have the pierce implicit, which is the one it comes with, which is you can pierce an additional enemy with your arrows or whatever. You want to make sure you don't get that, because it actually screws up your chain and your clear, because arrows or projectiles in this game have an order of those 3, so they will pierce, then they will chain, then they will fork in that order. So you want to make sure that you're not getting any pierce, because then it's going to take longer before it for it chains, and it's very weird. It's hard to explain. You think, well, you got a bit of pierce and a bit of chain. Why would that be terrible? But when you play it, you'll just feel the difference. And I'm pretty sure if you're using Ice Shot anyway, I don't know if this does the cone when it pierces. So every time it chains, it does the AoE cone. I don't know about pierce. I think it does, but it just feels worse. Just trust me on that. So, and getting a corrupted one with something else on is really not that expensive. There's a bunch of implicits you can get. The reason I've gone for the fire one is because it will help proc our Cinder Swallow. So we get like 10% increased damage taken when we ignite. You only need a tiny bit of fire damage in your setup somewhere. So that means when you hit, you crit, you will also ignite enemies, because the fire damage will cause an ignite. So it's very easy to do that. You can also just get it on a jewel like this, on your Abyss jewel, so it doesn't have to be on here. There's a lot of other POG implicits you can get on a Void Fletcher, like +1 chain, +1 arrow, and the others are pretty cheap, but those two are the big boys. You can probably go double corrupting some of these and get a really nice one as well. But yeah, Void Fletcher, very key to the build. I would say any build really for a bow that's doing cold damage at this point. Then for our rings, we're using the Taming. Just gives a shit ton of LE damage plus some all res as well. There are probably much better crafted rings you can use. You could also use one of these things for the Herald of Ice one. I don't think I have one here, but the circle of I don't remember the circle of whatever the other one's called. I definitely have one, so let me find it so I'm not being so stupid. Circle of Fear, you can see you get like up to like 50%, no, 60% increased damage mana reservation as well. This one's pretty good. It's got accuracy rating on as well, which is not too bad. Definitely competitive with this. It just you get cold res rather than this gives you a shit ton of all res, so it makes it easier to cap our res out. You just need to make sure you're capping those reses. We don't have a lot of slots to get res on, so definitely need to make sure you map out where you're going to get your resistances. Which brings you on to my other ring. My other ring is purely just resistance life. And we've also got some cold lightning damage craft on there. The lightning damage is to proc the final part of this ring. This ring basically gives you 20% increased damage per ailment you inflict. Obviously we're freezing everything because we're mainly cold. We're also igniting stuff because we have a bit of fire damage. So the only thing we're missing is a bit of lightning damage. So we put a bit of lightning damage there. So we shock things. We're not really doing significant shocks. So we're not really using it for like the shock effect. But it's just to proc this ring. And I don't even know if it does at this point. But it also has a 10% chance to shock, freeze, and ignite anyway. So that helps with it as well. But even with that, we're at least proccing 2 out of the 3. So it still gives a lot of damage. You can also use Mark of the Elder with a Shaper Ring and get that huge attack damage roll on there. That's also a play. That's entirely up to you. The ring's quite open. And obviously the Precursor Delve Rings, where you can get like +1 frenzies on. They would be very strong, but I think they're very expensive, and I've never actually messed around with them. You can also get like a lot of frenzy rolls on them that give you like stuff per frenzy, like damage and move speed and evasion and God knows what else. And then the last thing to note probably about the rings is there is a essence, and there's also a Redeemer mod that has flat damage per frenzy. It's flat cold damage per frenzy. That's alright, but by the time you have all these items like the crown and this, and you're stacking cold on the Hopeshredder, it's not as strong as it sounds, but it's probably still pretty good. So you can get a nice one with life and resist and all that good stuff, and maybe some extra stuff. Definitely worth it. You can get curse on hit rings, but you have to make sure that it's not really worth it. It's good for mapping, but unfortunately when you hit a mob, you want to sniper's mark for single target. You're just going to override the sniper's mark every time you then attack after that, because it applies the last one that was on hit. It doesn't just keep the strongest one up, I don't think, at least from the last time I tried it. You could just override curses yourself. So unfortunately that would be nice to have, like say LE weakness on hit on a ring, and use that for mapping for some extra damage, and then when it comes up to a boss you could just slap sniper's mark on it and it would do obviously more damage in total than having LE weakness on them. You could always go with a crafted chest and get an additional curse. That's also a play. But that brings me onto the chest. I'm using a replica lore weave because it gives a lot of stats. The only downside is that your maximum resistances are 72 rather than 75, so you're taking a lot more damage. But since we're dodge and evade, when we get hit anyway, we get hit pretty hard, so it's really not that much of a deal breaker. And the reason why you would use this, it gives some nice amount of war attributes, which is nice. Huge amount of global crit chance, huge life. The mana's not too bad, helps us be able to cast and level up our precision all that higher. And a bunch of early damage, and it's quite cheap. It was like 2x for a linked one. Just to get these sockets though, be careful. It cost a lot to get 4 green and 2 red. It near down broke me trying to get these little sockets. I forgot about that because it's a index base, I believe. Maybe just go with a crafted chest with like attack crit and maybe even explodey or power charge on crit, and big life and additional curse. There's a lot of things you can do with the chest, so it's probably better just going with a crafted one, but this is pretty easy to slot in as a unique. Then for our gloves, we want to make sure we're using Warlord, so we can get the +1 frenzy roll. It's probably best to just spam it on. That's how I did it, because it's quite a low weighting, so it's expensive to buy one with like +1 frenzy and life and then a resist. It's going to be a lot easier just to craft it, so that's what I did. And we also did it on gripped gloves because then you get the increased projectile attack damage as well. So that's the best base for us. It's also a dex base as well, so we get some nice evasion rating. So those are pretty good. You can also get like culling strike on warlord gloves, which is not a bad alternative, but I think the +1 frenzy is upwards of like 15 to 20% more damage per frenzy at this point in my build, so it's definitely worth. That is like the T1 roll you want to get. You just want to get that with life and resist. If you can get that with culling strike or something else, that would be insane. I think you could also get another projectile attack roll on the gloves as well from warlord influence, so and obviously with awakener's orbs, anything can be done. You can get some insane shit, so +1 frenzy though, definitely the big boy there. Belt, you want to use a Stygian Vise, because then you get the socket, and you can get either onslaught or phasing for whatever you need, depending on which raider nodes you take. And obviously we want to get a Redeemer one because then we get all the cold mods, and we also get some projectile attack damage rolls that we can get on there. This is a really nice one that I crafted by accident before I started playing this build. I was trying to make one for a Winter Orb character because you can also get a roll that reads increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. But we hit the cold damage and the projectile during Flask with a T1 life, and we also had a spare prefix so we could roll LE damage with attacks on. So we have a triple damage belt with T1 life and cold res. Pretty much dead stat on the regen because it's so low, it's pretty much doing nothing. But if we get a remove life, we could 50-50 that with harvest. But for now, that is pretty much good enough to go and will carry you all the way to the end game. You can obviously put the qualities on this. I did resistance for some reason, but I'm pretty sure I should do the elemental one. It will increase the cold and the damage with attack skills. If you have a normal Stygian Vise, you can just hit it with some prismatic and or serrated fossils with pristine, and you can easily get yourself like some nice resistances, life, and a big damage with attack skills. Worst cases, you craft it on like I've done, but that's a pretty good belt to follow there. And then in there we've just got a Searching Eye Jewel with some life and some damage. I need phasing really on one of my jewels so I can drop this and go for a much bigger, girthier anoint, but I'm being lazy, so there it is. And then Dark Ray Vectors for our boots, because they have +1 frenzy on it. Again, pretty much the only reason these boots are still here, other than they give you a lot more move speed than any other boot would, because we're stacking frenzies, we get 5% per, and that means we get 45 in this current setup. We also get a bunch of dodge as well, we get like 18 dodge I think, or something like that, which means we pretty much hit the cap I think when our frenzies are up for our dodge attack hits. Our spell dodge is the only one that doesn't reach the cap. They also have resist on them as well, so it makes it a little bit easier once again to get your resistance capped. But yeah, the +1 frenzy is really carrying these boots. Obviously, I need to enchant mine with something. I think the LE damage, if you haven't killed recently, will be probably best in slot. Then you're looking at maybe increase attack and cast speed if you've killed recently, cold damage if you've been hit recently, fire damage if you've killed recently. That could be your way of getting fire damage for the Cinder Swallow. And move speed if you haven't been hit recently, also very good as well. We're already very fast, so that would just amplify that. I think late game, if you swap out the bow for a +1 frenzy, or you get a +1 frenzy somewhere else, you're at least 9 or 10 frenzies, and you can drop the boots. Tailwind elusive boots are going to be insane. Tailwind's going to give you a lot of damage because of how much attack speed you already have, and that's just straight up a more multiplier on top of that. So that's definitely something worth looking into. I'm definitely going to try making some elusive tailwind boots soon, because I've never made a pair and I have enough money now to get some Awakeners Orbs and try. So I think I will try making some really nice boots and then see how it goes. Could be potentially more damage, I suppose, than the +1 frenzy, but I think, at least from the POB at the moment, it looks like the +1 frenzy completely beats out Tailwind. So if you just want to go fast, I guess Tailwind would be better, because it's a straight up more multiplier to your move speed as well, because it's action speed. So we'll see later down the line, but as a cheap alternative, these are pretty good. And you can also get, like, you know, corrupted ones, maybe with some move speed on them or something, extra move speed. Who knows? So there's the boots. And then obviously for Flasks, we just got an instant bleed flask. We don't really need it that much because we're immune to corrupted blood. But obviously if you're not immune to corrupted blood, you need a bleed flask somewhere. Then we have a diamond flask with freeze immune on it. Move speed flask, got to go fast. Biggest damage flask we've got, Dying Sun. Definitely recommend the 2 extra proj on the barrage setup for our frenzy barrage. Massive. Don't know why I said it like that. Just to explain, it's just, well, not to explain, just to reiterate how strong it really is for our single target. And then Cinder Swallow, even though we're perma onslaughted anyway, this thing for mapping is just godlike. You get hit and you don't get one shot, and you just kill a pack, you're just going to get instantly all your life back. Has a huge crit roll on it as well, so if you can't get one with crit on it, it's probably still worth using, because the 10% more damage taken as well. And I suppose if you can't get a Cinder Swallow, but for some reason you can get a Bottled Faith, maybe you found one, whacking a Bottled Faith that will probably give you more damage. This just feels smoother for mapping while having quite a lot of extra damage from it anyway because of the crit. And obviously taking different raider nodes, you might not have perma onslaught, so the onslaught will actually be doing something for you. Then we'll talk about the links. So we're using Frenzy, we're using an alternate quality, the anonymous one. Anonymous, I can never say it. I think I'm saying it right. This basically just gives +1 projectile when it's at 20 quo. Like I said, +1 proj is huge damage increase, so definitely recommend getting one of those. Doesn't really have to be 21, 20 or anything like that. Attack skills don't scale too hard off their level, so don't just get a 20-20 or even like a 19-20 and level up yourself. Then that is linked with LE damage with attack skills, cold pen, added cold, awakened added cold, and awakened cold pen. Pretty cheap awakened gems, and they add quite a lot of damage. Added cold is way better than Ice Bite support, even though you'd think it'd be better because it's cold damage per frenzy, but this actually beats it. Even a normal 20-20 cold damage is pretty much equal to Ice Bite. Then we got barrage support. This is what turns it into a straight line nuke. So you definitely need that. And then we're using LE focus because that is the biggest, like, more multiplier you can get on one gem. Like I said, this means you can't like freeze or chill with your barrage, so you need to make sure that you're hitting stuff and they're chilled. We're actually not using hypothermia, so what I said at the start was a bit of a lie, but I think the chilled box we're taking on POB that's given us huge damage increase is probably coming from this, the 24 pen. So you still need to make sure you're chilling stuff even if you're using this, and you can also use hypothermia in here if you want to. But it's not terrible. You could use it over, say, like added cold or maybe cold pen. Actually, I wouldn't cold pen because cold pen's huge. Now, there's probably no room. Maybe for this, put hypothermia in instead. It's almost equal to that. It's like 10% less damage, but you'll have, you know, because your barrage will be able to freeze, so it'll be just more consistent, and you'll always be proccing the amulet. Then for our clear skill, we're using Ice Shot. Mirage Archer GMP is pretty much guaranteed in any setup here for clear. inspiration, chain, which helps us just make the clear even better, and then any damage with attacks. Depending on which skill you use, this could change a little bit, but for the most part, even like Tornado Shot will require the same setup. If you use like Rain of Arrows, you can take the GMP out and use like Hypothermia or Added Cold or Ice Bite, whichever. But I felt with Rain of Arrows, because you don't get like the off-screen kind of cleave that Ice Shot does, you can sometimes get biffed a lot more because you're not like CCing as much mobs in an area, because Ice Shot will obviously freeze much more consistently because of the line on it that chills, even though you're doing chills as if you were doing a lot more damage, so you get a lot more freeze action on that. So I feel like Ice Shot just generally is the best in most situations, but it's up to you. Then for our auras, we're using Hatred, Herald of Ice, Precision with an Enlightened, so we have plenty of mana to play with. Remember, you have insane attack speed on your Frenzy, so you know, be careful that you leave enough mana to be able to cast a few times, especially even while hitting. You got to be careful that the leech is quick enough to keep up with the attack speed because of the you know, the more multiplier on Frenzy. Also, you can use Frenzy in your main link as well, and it's really good. You don't need to swap anything out. But I just don't like swapping gems, so I like to have a single target button and a clear button. That's what I love about this setup. It's very smooth. So you just run into a boss room, put down your shit, just go to town, and then back to your clear without gem swapping or anything. And then that feeds in nicely, I guess, to the two buttons here. Obviously, we're using dash with second wind just for some extra movement, and a cast on damage taken are more cool. So when we do get hit, we take a little bit less damage. That also stacks with our Wind Dancer, so we're taking a lot less damage when we haven't been hit recently. Then we're using Frostbomb. We'll basically apply a cold exposure when it goes off, I think, or is it when it first goes out? Either or, but minus 25 cold res, basically 25 cold pen, huge damage increase, so make sure you get that under the boss and you hit with it. And then we're using Sniper's Mark, Wave of Conviction, Arcanist Brand. So basically when we put this down, it will attach to an enemy. So obviously you put it under the boss, it will attach to them as soon as they're able to be hit. And it will basically alternate. It will fire out a Sniper's Mark, so it will mark them with Sniper's Mark, and then it will fire out a Wave of Conviction, which can also cleave other stuff. So in rituals, you can actually put a few of these down, and helps just add some extra damage and put Sniper's Mark on things. You can only Sniper Mark one thing at a time, so you may mainly use this for single target. You just put that down with an ice bomb, and then you just go to town. Obviously, pop all flasks, and that is your burst damage there. You can also use Orb of Storms here, maybe, and then Curse on hit, Sniper's Mark, but then you'll have to cast Wave of Conviction yourself. You could also put Wave of Conviction on like a cast on damage taken setup. But we're quite skint for gems here, like sockets, so just be careful with what you do there. I mean, some people don't even use cast on damage taken setups, so that's entirely up to you. Then for the tree, and our Ascendancy, we're obviously a Raider. We're taking the Frenzy nodes. No matter how you build this character, you got to take these. When you're stacking this many Frenzies, this node here will give you a shit ton of stats. A lot of evasion, bunch of move speed, bunch of attack speed, bunch of attack damage. This would also just mean that you can basically get your Frenzies up as soon as you kill or hit any unique, which is obviously all the time. +1 Frenzy as well. And then at this point, I would say the phasing nodes and this avatar of the Veil. This node is actually going to be stronger in terms of damage and survivability overall, both of them, because it's giving you a lot more spell dodge and attack dodge as well. So you'll definitely be hitting the cap with this. You'll be having almost at the cap with spell dodge because we take phase acro and all that stuff as well. So we have a lot of dodge, and dodge is way stronger than evade, because if you don't know, evade is essentially a system of when you evade, you have less chance to evade then again. So it basically stacks up to a point where you're always eventually going to get hit. But it lies behind, well, it's in front of dodge. So if you miss, you evade, get hit, or it goes through evade, then it rolls the dodge chance. And then obviously if you dodge it, you dodge it. But dodge is always a flat amount. If you have 50%, it's 50-50 if you're going to get hit, which is why dodge is capped to 75 always. You could get 100% and never be hit. So very strong, and this also then gives less accuracy as well, which is another like multiplier of that kind of same system. The mobs have less likely to even just hit you, so it doesn't even calculate the evade or dodge. So they have less accuracy. You also are immune to ailments, which is really nice. You can't get shocked and then get one banged because you're taking 50% increased damage. You can't get frozen, so you don't need to have that on your flasks. Opens up slots there, like curse removal. And you also get the -20 res as well, which is even more single target damage. The onslaught nodes, which I've taken, essentially mean you have permanently a 60% increased attack and cast and move speed. And it gives you like 35% more evade, but this doesn't really add too much. I think it just stacks with your evasion evade. And it took my evade from like 20 to like 30%, which is like not really that good. If this had like dodge on it like it used to, or whatever it was before, or like I said, even if it just had some dodge on it, or maybe some other cool thing like 10% less damage when you get hit, it could maybe be competitive. But for the most part, if you just want to go fast and maybe you're over geared and you can just one-shot everything anyway, obviously this is going to give you like 60 move speed permanently, so it's really nice. Like even in town with technically no move speed, right? We have 5 move speed on our boots because we only have 1 frenzy up, and we're faster than most normal characters with like 40 move speed boots. And then obviously once we have our frenzies up, we get 40% from our bow, we're getting 45 from our boots, we get like 40 from our Ascendancy. We basically, with the Flask up, we have like 2 to 250 move speed permanently, so it's really strong. But yeah, like I said, this is more consistent and is going to be better in most situations, but this is just if you want to go fast, and it's still pretty good damage because the attack speed, right, is huge for our frenzy. And then the tree, pretty basic LE damage tree. We're going down here, we're taking point blank for the single target. You just got to make sure you're right up in their face. We're taking wind dancer, so we take a lot less damage if we haven't been hit recently. It just means our evasion is lower, but it's worth it, so it stops you from getting one shot in most situations. We're obviously taking all the frenzies at every point here. Then we've also taken the frenzy like stacking nodes here as well, because this gives you like damage. This is like almost 80% increased damage there on that node. Bunch more attack speed, even more move speed, and some evasion rating. Obviously taking here the cold damage with the cold pen. Life wherever we go past it, life here. Probably drop this once I have some better strength requirements on my gear, but I've taken that really for the strength, but it also gives like flask generation. It's quite nice. Our Watcher's Eye here is a crit Watcher's Eye, definitely not needed, and there's obviously more options for hatred, like the increased cold damage one, the flat cold damage one. There's precision ones with attack speed, attack damage, crit multi. You can do a lot here, or you can put in a custom jewel, a unique rare, whatever. Taking all the crit here. We're not taking King of the Hill because I hate the knockback on this thing. Absolute garbage. You just end up barraging the mob away from you, and if you don't know, point blank is, point blank. You got to be stood right in front of them, otherwise you start losing the damage on point blank. So it's actually a net damage loss. So I've actually only taken 2 points towards it here because this one gives 15 multi. So for 2 points, you get like, 20 crit and then 15 multi. Might be kind of worth it. I probably might drop that at some point. And then this point here is just to cap our accuracy. You want to make sure you have a 100% chance to hit, because we're crit based. Otherwise you're going to have we've got all the crit down here as well. LE damage, taking all the dodge. Going in here for some more LE damage with penetration, evasion, life. We've got a Lion Eyes full, pretty common spot to put it here because it clips all the claw nodes and turns them into bow nodes, and they're all crit. And a lot of leech, like this leech here, Soul Reaker, look at that, very strong. I've got a Corrupted Blood one, like I said, which is like 6x. You definitely don't need to get a Corrupted Blood one. Get a normal one, it's like 10c, so very easy to get that. Corrupted Blood is basically like an annoying debuff if you don't know. Sometimes when you hit stuff, you'll get like a bleed applied to you, and it can stack up to 20 times. So if you just one-shot a pack with Corrupted Blood on them, a lot of the times you just get 20 stacks of this Corrupted Blood on your head, and it basically drains your life instantly. So you can imagine that combined with us running forward with a Hopeshredder debuff, you literally get one shot, and there's literally no time to react. So I would definitely recommend trying to get this somewhere, maybe on like a rare jewel. Just buy a rare jewel with like something useful on it, plus Corrupted Blood. It's definitely a game changer once you start playing with being immune to Corrupted Blood, and then you go to another character without it. You will notice how fucking godlike it feels to have Corrupted Blood immunity. And then obviously we've gone up here to take even the more crit and the life. and obviously the frenzy. There's nothing special going on about this tree, and in terms of anoints, I'm probably going to either anoint ambidextrous. I can't say it. I'm dying. Help me. You know what I'm saying? I'm hovering over it right now. Oh, there you go. Basically, gives 50% increased attack damage because our main hand is the bow, so we get 50% attack damage from that. We can also take Divine Judgment for 50 LE damage. It's also a cheap anoint. And if you want to be tankier for like more life, a bit more of a pool to be beaten into, you can obviously take Constitution or any other big life node. Maybe even this one, Heart of the Warrior. You could maybe even take Overcharge for generating some charges. There's a lot of options for the anoint. I'll leave it to your imagination. Another big one as well would be Heart of Ice, a bit more expensive because it's gold. But that's 25 cold damage plus 6 pen. POB will probably on Cyrus damage say that's the biggest damage increase one because of the penetration. And that's it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything, right? If I've missed something, or I've spoke too fast, or I've said something stupid, let me know down below. This video is almost 50 minutes, so I mean it's under an hour. That's the best I can do. Alright. But if you're still here, you're a legend. If you want to see me play this build live and all that good stuff, and play next builds or ask questions what on Twitch and all that, link will be down below, so you can come ask some questions. I can check your build, all that good stuff. I'm a good boy streamer like that, so I will answer any questions there. Obviously, leave comments down below if you have any questions and you don't use Twitch. Twitter down below as well. And POB for this exact setup that you're seeing now is also down below. It's like a snapshot. But if you want to see my character's progression, if I ever change it, you can go to import on POB. Make sure you're on the community fork one. And up here normally it'll have like the name you type in. If you type in Danny Fitzy as the name, hit search, then select the League Ritual, and then it will give you like a list like this of all my characters in Ritual. You basically just select the Raider. If I've made another Raider, then the name is Wide Gonk Brain. And then you import passives and items and skills, and then you're able to see all my gear. So if I was to change something now after this video and I've posted this link, that's just a better way of getting most up to date. But don't always do that, because if I move gear and swap stuff around, it can be kind of bad. So I definitely would check the normal POB down below first, because this will be a complete one, and then maybe you can look at mine and see if I've done anything different. And obviously if it's all broken, then it's probably because I've teared the character down or using the gear elsewhere. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it helped, and yeah, if you're still here, stay wide, stay safe, and stay out of my way, because I will barrage you with my frenzy, mate, and it's got a lot of projectiles. Fucking please like the video.